Right, here we are, the third of the pre-season series sessions, and we've got a focus on opening the innings. So we have joining me today Ethan Bamber, who's going to look at this from a bowling perspective, not to be too presumptive there, Ethan, to label you as a bowler. And equally, Paul Horton's going to be looking at it from a batting perspective. So I think the first one, and if we start with Ethan here, when we look at opening the innings, what kind of things do you do in terms of planning or a routine to help you be in the right space mentally to get on with it from ball one?
Yeah, I think probably the first thing for me to say is that obviously I haven't played a huge amount of cricket, and so it's still something I'm really working out what works best for me. But I've definitely tried some different things. I think the fundamental thing for me is that I walk on feeling as prepared as possible. And on a very basic level, that comes down to like my physical preparation, having the right fuel on board, hydration, all that kind of stuff. So I can then focus on the cricket because I find that hard enough. I've experimented with kind of how much research, I guess, you do into the opposition batters. But I think particularly in 4-day cricket, where I've had more of my, albeit limited experience, it's often about just adapting, I think, quite an already set game plan based around your strengths to the slight nuances or idiosyncrasies of other batters. So I think really for me, I try and get an understanding of what's going to be required on that pitch, what the conditions might do. I have a little thought about how the opposition might play, but really I think I'm trying to focus on what I can do to influence the game. In the past year, I've got lost in worrying too much about batters, and that's not worked so well.
Okay. What differences or similarities are there from your experience, Paul?
I think it's really interesting what Ethan says. I think we focus on sometimes that balance of focusing on the opposite number and what the bowler might do, but also adapting his strengths and to the conditions of the batter he's facing against, but also the conditions given on that day. So he mentions about discussing what he would look to do on that certain wicket at that certain time, and I think that's really interesting because as a batter opening the innings, you're trying to do the same thing, gather as much information as quickly as possible to work out a game plan quickly as an opening batter to then understand how you're going to execute and score runs against Ethan's bowling as such, or bowling in general. The beauty of batting a little bit further down the order is you get a bit of cues after half an hour or an hour's play. So, there's feedback. The dressing room says the wicket's got to be in there or it's bouncing or whatever. So I'm doing the same thing as Ethan is doing. Yes, I have an understanding of his bowling and his skill, but also I'm trying to adapt how I can combat that on any given surface at the start of an innings. So I think for me, it's about, you got to be prepared and focused and understand what you're going to do, i.e. you give yourself the best preparation. But the understanding of the little idiosyncrasies that Ethan talks about on the day against me works the other way as a batter. So I'm trying to adapt to see how much swing he's getting, how much bounce he's getting, how much pace is in the wicket, and how am I going to adapt my strength in my game plan and my game to be able to combat what Ethan throws at me. And that was sometimes unsuccessful, even though he's been modest and he says he's only had a short experience. He had a short enough time to get me out. So, and I also noticed, Mark, that you didn't apologise for just pigeonholing me as a batter only. So, a bit disappointed about that introduction.
Yeah, I think I will regret that as the summer goes on. We speak about it. So if we've got through the planning and the routine there, a big theme that came across when we did the first session with Ollie Robinson was about expectations and how sometimes they can be problematic if you have unrealistic expectations. And he was talking about a mechanism of trying to ensure that his expectations sometimes are moderated if there is a difficult situation there. So if we go back to Ethan, I know it really depends on the specific situation, but do you have a particular set of expectations or things that you're wanting to achieve when you have that new conker in your hand and you're ready to go?
I have definitely, I think, been guilty of that. And I think everyone wants, you want to run in that first ball and just feel like you're kind of floating and get that snap and see it whistle through and just get the shape away and like keep it, take it like that, which doesn't happen very often with me. And I think I've always wanted to search for that and be like, if it's not there, what's going wrong? Why is it not happening? I think certainly last year and over this winter, I've tried to really practice actually having only one expectation of myself, which is like absolute commitment to what I decide to do, to my process and what I decide to do. And I know it's quite a vogue thing to talk about, like process, not outcome, but it really has helped me be able afterwards to then go back and analyze more productively, I suppose, how I've actually gone, because the outcome is so variable and expectations are so rarely lived out, I think. And actually, the way you expect a game to go so rarely happens, that those expectations can be quite, what I found can be quite damaging to my kind of how I view myself and my performance. So actually, if I can just judge it on the process I've gone through, then I know that's consistent every time. And I know that whatever ground I turn up at, whatever surface, my process is the same. And so I can judge whether I've actually gone well or poorly. I don't know, Paul, if it's a different thing from a batting perspective in terms of the pitch, or the game situation comes maybe more into it. But
yeah, I think you're right with regards to the process. I always think that bowling is so as well, but batting is a bit of a game of failure, really. Yeah. So is my expectation to score 100 as a professional batter, or so that was what it was. So the times I managed to do that are very few and far between. So you have to then take away that and understand that at times you are going to, not score the volume of runs that you feel is warranted, what you think is what you perceive as a success. So you then have to package up differently. And you're right, getting back to your process and staying in your area, your zone of what you do in that moment is key to then trying to do it for longer. And I think batting was key for that. And when people have challenges, and I certainly had challenges of maybe at times, so the age old people get out in the 90s sometimes. Now, they've probably changed their mindset in the 90s because the 90s takes over to a degree. So I maybe softened in and around 30s and 40s, and then on the back of scoring at 50 because I'd sort of relaxed maybe a bit too much, because 30 and 40, I thought I got in and I got a start and I started to get over the new ball. And then, after getting a 50, maybe I then relaxed because I thought I'm playing well, I've scored a 50 and I'll start to kick on. And the guys who had most success when I played, no matter whether they're 150 or 15, seemed to be in the same area as a headspace and repeat the same movements and body language and focus. And I found that truly amazing. Simon Kadich was one of the best I've seen at it. Yeah, he talked about getting the next 10, and that was the scoreboard. And he could be 150. He could get that. He could get these next 10 in 3 balls, and I was trying to get it in singles, but he never changed his viewpoint, and that was incredible. So that the best performers, in my opinion, when I played, always managed to stay within that realm better than others did.
I reckon one of the things which, if people watching and listening are in similar positions as club players who open the bowling or the batting, it's often good intentions that we can set out with. And like you both mentioned, having a plan and having a set of things that you might go to. But often it's the setbacks which are the things which require quite a lot of resolve to deal with. I'll start with you, Hortz, because the setback of getting out is much more impactful and like terminal than, say, being bought off from your spell in say, opening bowler's case. So as you just, I'm sorry to put you through this, but just to sort of imagine or visualize, you have got out and it might be quite early on and you're walking back up to the changing rooms. What was your way of being able to cope or deal with that?
I think there is no set way. I think people have different ways of coping with different things. For me, you always have that initial disappointment when you get out, whether you're getting out in the hallway playing with your little boy and girl, or you're getting out in the garden, or getting out in front of 15,000 people. I think that feeling of getting out from a batter is the same feeling. How you deal with it is the range of emotion that you go through, and understanding that you need to give yourself time to process it, like anything you do that is emotional in your life. I think initially you have that feeling of, I wasn't out a lot of the time. That was me, maybe when I was LPW a lot. And then you have that feeling of, well, actually, did I do anything wrong? And then if you're really honest with yourself, you then isolate it and assess that maybe you did make some mistakes, and you have to try and learn from that. Now, that happens really quickly within a moment when you get out, and you have to try and process them and hold your nerve as much as possible, as best you can. But I think the point on, we're talking about starting the innings, or starting batting and starting bowling. I think you can unravel yourself quickly more than the opposition can at times. So Ethan talks about running in, getting that snap, getting it going through. What if he doesn't feel that at the start? Where does he go to then mentally? He might not still be bowling okay. Where do I go to if I play and miss a little bit, or if I play a bad shot, or Ethan's bowling really well and I play and miss? It's that unraveling that you need to try and take care of within the game, I think, because you will have watched cricket, and every club cricket watches cricket on a Saturday afternoon, and you can almost get a feel when a batter is going to get out, because they become unsettled, they start to play different shots, or they look to do something different. So I think that happens faster in the game for you. So I think it's the unraveling of yourself that is the key to control. So for me, it's staying within, like I talked about, staying within your bubble or your realm of repeating what your basic, pre-delivery is as a bowler and batter, and then understand the outcome will be different. And sometimes you'll get lucky and sometimes you won't. But if you stick in that all afternoon or half the afternoon, you'll get a few runs.
What about this idea? And I love the phrase of sort of unraveling. Does that strike a chord with you there, Ethan? Perhaps do you sense maybe when the spell might be coming to an end and you've not done what you want from it? And you'll have a long time as well, potentially then going off to field somewhere, and someone might be doing what you wanted to do. So how is that coped with, especially given you're actively in the game? You've got to be switched on for your fielding and your contributions there.
Yeah, I suppose it's something that I try and manage and do so with great difficulty at points. I know the feeling, even as Paul was describing it there, and unraveling is, you're right, is such a good term. I can feel like if I don't think I've done my job, my shoulders go up, I get tense, I can feel this like heat in my body, this like pressure, and I try harder. And someone said to me, it's a bit corny, but why try harder if you're already trying as hard as you can? And I know that as soon as I try harder, all the things that I feel when I feel in a good place go away. And actually one of the main unravelings I've had, as I suppose kind of trying to make my way in the game, is playing against people who I see as like very good. So people either with a great first class record or a big name, or who I've watched on TV. And I've found that, and continue sometimes to find that really difficult actually to go back to the process we were talking about and not to let it get away. Because there's an example in a game last year, I was bowling someone who I knew was really aggressive, and they had a really good, they're really good through the covers, and then they hit me full through the covers, and in my head I could feel like, oh no, here we go. Like, I knew this was going to happen. I try and bowl full, he's good against people who bowl full, he's going to like, and all these things, and suddenly I've bowled 5 balls of an over and I haven't thought about one ball. And it's like, I don't know, just as Paul was describing there, it's very I could really feel that happening again. It's a real thing to try and, the people, I think you're right, the people who deal with it best are those who can bring themselves back to actually like their little area of land and what they can do and what they're in control of.
With this, we always speak about these things in cricket as what's Ethan going to do, what's Paul going to do, what's John from your club going to do. And I know it is a cliche, but I'm going to have to repeat it. it's this thing of it being a team sport played by individuals. And I think in this space, we're always looking for any option we can find to make the team environment, perhaps another cliche, that bit more supportive. But how much of what you're doing, if I start with Hortz, as an opening bat, yes, you do have a partner, but how much can you have support and how much is really just left to what you're going to be doing?
I think you, as an opening batter, sometimes your support is maybe after the event a lot of the time. Your support into the game leads up and then you start the game, say 11 o'clock or whenever the game starts. But I think once your role is over, or you've maybe not scored any runs or you're out, your role doesn't finish in regards to the team and the success in the dressing room. And the last thing the dressing room wants or needs is the opening batter to get out and come in and say, geez, good luck, lads. That's really bad, really hard work out there. It's seaming everywhere, it's bouncing, or he's bowling the speed of light. Now, that happens to a degree, but as an opening batter, you've got to be conscious that the three guys you speak to when you walk in are the guys you'll get next in. So professional batters can cope with it. They're big enough boys to deal with it. But club cricket, if you walk in and you say the pro that they've got, who they already feel, who's already got an advantage that Ethan talks about with that unravelling because we're playing against an overseas fast bowler from Australia or a Pakistani left arm spinner who's a brilliant bowler, that unravels before you start. So that fear unravels then. Then if I add to that and say, yeah, he's bowling really quick, you're going to get hurt. That speeds it up quickly for the team in the dressing room. So it does happen, but I think that's what you got to sort of understand, that your role doesn't, your role carries on when you go into the dressing room to support and communicate clear, good advice that will help the next batters going in to work out their game plan to combat what's coming down. And as an opposition, I always found the battle of, I'm a batter, Ethan's a bowler. It's a bit like a one-on-one duel. I'm looking for his slight crack in emotion or his tenseness and for me to then get on top. We're both like swans scrambling underneath to try and hold in our emotions and our feelings and our nerves and anxiety. I'm trying to give him the impression I know what I'm doing as a batter. He's trying to give me the impression he knows where he's putting the ball and how to get me out. And we're both fighting with that. Once someone breaks down, then the other one tries to come through and throw the counter punches. For Test cricket and first class cricket is an example of two teams doing it over a long period of time. The best teams duel out for 12 rounds and then it's a draw. But the weaker teams hold for a certain time and then there'll be a moment in the game where the stronger team takes hold of the game and bang, bang, bang. Same as when, the teams now turn up to Anfield, as a football example, they're expecting Liverpool to dominate and they're scared of them already. They're already losing the psychological battle because Liverpool have created an aura, the aura that Man United created for so many times, for so many years. And that's, you try and create that as a performer.
It might be slightly different or indeed in a lot of ways the same, Ethan. As a bowler, you've perhaps got the benefit of the real time and the unit that's there. But when you're at the top of your mark, ready to bowl, I suppose you are just there pretty much on your own. How far do you manage to get that kind of support or a different perspective or anything to make it not so lonely when you're in your position?
Yeah, I think, the people I've played with have always been fantastically supportive. I like having one experienced bowler or someone who I trust and can lean on and who knows me and mid on and mid off. But it can feel very lonely if it's not going how you want, I think. And my mindset or my outlook is often I cocked it up, I've got to fix it. And I can go very insular. So I sometimes don't think I take on that support as well as I might. And I think it can I'm not sure. I find it maybe hard to really engage with those other people in the absolute moment. It might be at the end of an over or the end of a session when that really pays dividends. And I think one of the things we've tried to do at Middlesex this year is actually practice it, and practice talking to one another in training about what we're trying to work on, what we feel when we do well, so we can almost like help each other with little cues, because it is one thing that you get as a bowler that you don't get as a batter. It was his time and another opportunity. I get a day in which I can be rubbish for 2 hours, but if I manage to just to tweak something or fix something, I can finish that day feeling really good. Whereas Paul could make one mistake or get unlucky in one sense, and that's that day done. And I think that's a benefit that you have being a bowler that you don't as a batter. I think in both situations, when you struggle, you feel isolated, but we're not actually isolated. And remembering that is, I think, something important. I don't know if that's answered the question at all. Actually.
No, that's absolutely great. And I think this leads us to the recurrent theme, and the one which ties all of this together. Everything that you two have mentioned, if we took cricket context out of it, it can be applied to other areas of our lives. And part of this continuum of mental health is that it doesn't just exist when there's problems or things that are of a clinical nature, or just the side of things where there are struggles. It's also about that side of the fitness and trying to stretch ourselves, and of course everything in the middle. But it hinges on the quality of the conversations that we have, and I guess people feeling that they're able to have the permission to be vulnerable, to ask for help. This is probably not so much specific to the opening, the batting and opening the bowling, but we can place it in that context. Hortz, if we go to you for this, where for you was that sweet spot of being able to ask for some help, whether it be feedback with what's going on, but also feeling like you're not going to be judged for it, and it's not going to be a sort of black mark against your name?
I think it's a real good question. I think in professional cricketers and professional sportsmen, I think it's still an ongoing battle. That I think it's very hard at times to maybe go to your coach and your boss and your captain and say, I don't think I'm very good at batting in this position, or I don't think I'm hitting the ball very well, or I don't think I'm very good at doing X. When all you try and do, I think initially in times and in training, is prove to them that you warrant a place in the team. So I think that comes down to the environment being safe enough for people and individuals to be open enough to say, I'm struggling with this, or I'm struggling with the ball a little bit, or I'm not feeling it as such with the batting, or I'm not comfortable. And that is a very hard thing to find and get. And I struggled with it the first part of my career because I was trying to prove myself, a little bit like Ethan. He's trying to prove to the Middlesex coaches and the captain that he warrants a place in the team. So it can be maybe uncomfortable at times to say, you know what, it's not really feeling that well. It's not really feeling great. The ball isn't feeling great in my hand at the moment. Try and support me through this, or I want to work on this, or opening yourself up like that can feel vulnerable, I think, at times, especially when you want to continue to take opportunities and play. So that balance, I think, is hard to find. What I find in my experience of club cricket is I think that we put almost so much pressure on ourselves as amateur cricketers to play on a Saturday afternoon when we train for a couple of hours a week, and we give up our time on a Saturday afternoon and expect ultra performances when we're there for other things as well as winning games of cricket, but to enjoy the afternoon and to play a beautiful game that cricket is, and all them things. So I've been astounded at the pressure that is built on club cricketers to perform through their keenness to do well. And I think they miss the bigger picture at times. Like Ethan, I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, no, it's all good. Ethan, what about you? Because I know when I've spoken with Paul before, there's been, of course, in the game and in society, a change from perhaps the beginning of his career towards the end. Where is it for you in terms of finding a way to, for want of a better term, put your hand up and say, actually, this isn't quite working for me, whether that be cricket or feeling something else which is not necessarily related to the game?
Yeah, I think I feel fortunate to have kind of entered the game at a point where this is a much more talked about subject. I know we've had conversations in the past. I still feel it's discussed on a superficial level within many sports changing rooms, and not, it's still reacted to rather than prevented. And it's still almost like, oh, he's struggling. Well, it's good he said something, but just go over there and then you come back when you're fixed. And I think maybe the hangover of a long time when this wasn't something that could be openly spoken about has meant that there is a feeling within sports people, particularly, that there has to be a front, that the person on the pitch has to be the person off the pitch. And I definitely, a couple of years ago, when I was having a difficult time, thought that I had to push through, and like actually the answer lay in hard work, or I'd created it so I can fix it. And I don't know, I suppose someone helped me to kind of take a leap of faith and talk to someone who I wouldn't have normally spoken to. And I was absolutely dreading that conversation. And their reaction to it was not any of the things I had feared, but it was actually one of real empathy, and they listened, and the weight that I felt having kind of revealed that almost was like a kind of taking a cape off. So that's taught, I suppose what that's taught me is that in those situations when I'm not sure, I know which side I want to err on, I'd rather overshare in that situation to someone who I trusted. Because I think, having experienced what I did, I would rather not be a cricketer than experience that again, if that makes sense. So if I spoke to a coach and they sacked me because I spoke to them about it, after all the upset and disappointment and frustration, I think I would still do it again, because I'm slightly going around in circles, but I hope I've expressed my point clearly. So I don't think it's an easy thing, but I think through experience, and hopefully there's people there who you can talk to, maybe it's not quite as it's never quite as bad as you think it might be in your head before you have a conversation.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Two more things. One of them is around a theme which I know, Ethan, we've discussed a bit before, and I'm sure we will have done over the years, Paul. And it's around this thing of identity. And I fell into the trap here because this session this evening, we're recording it and we're billing it as someone who is an opening bowler, someone who is an opening batter. And applying these labels are quite convenient to help identify who people are and what they're talking about. But consistently, we see with professional sport that a lot of self-worth and esteem can be attached to how well someone has done in their job. And I suppose it extends into other places as well. If you're a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, a retail assistant, whatever you do for a living. So what is there that you've, I suppose, learned about how to try and not make your identity all about being that person, that sports person? And I suppose really without putting you on the spot too much, Hortz, as someone now who is in that period after having been that opening batter, being the ex-professional player.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and I think it's something that when you leave the game, is a real challenge, and I never thought it would be, to the degree it is. So you are known as the cricketer or the player you were, and that when that is taken away, or you're no longer that guy, you are just like all the other guys who played the game. You just are a cricketer who had a name and a load of numbers next to them. Some guys have better numbers and bigger numbers than you, and ultimately you just have certain numbers and they have certain numbers next to you. So statistics. So your identity is then, you can then struggle with that identity, I think, and I'm struggling with that as my transitional phase out of the game. So I think what you need to realize when you're going on, and I struggled with this a lot, I think, within my career was, cricket became, and your profession is huge for you. It becomes you. You become Ethan the bowler or Paul the cricketer. And that's every day, that's day in, day out. When there is more to life than that, because you are Ethan the son, you might have brothers or sisters. I became a father later on in my career, right at the back end. And in hindsight, I would have probably been a better cricketer if I'd have become a father earlier, because I would have realised there was more to existence and life than scoring runs and winning games of cricket. So what you can be as a father or a friend or as a cousin, all of them things is what your real identity is to you as a person. Whether you're a good bowler, batter, wicketkeeper, doctor, lawyer, doesn't really matter. It's what you are inside and your values, and that's something that I've only learned later on.
So Ethan, I suppose the pressure is on you to learn it earlier, or take some of that from what goes on around you. How do you find that balance? And we did speak about this, I think, when you were on the podcast, about sort of switching off from cricket linked to identity. How much of that is a challenge for you?
Well, I don't think it could be expressed better than Paul has there, but it's a difficult thing, and I think obviously we've spoken about it, and I think people coming through in my position, and I said it in answer to the last question, but we are better placed because of the generosity of people like Paul and former players who are now talking about their experiences. I think it's putting younger players and people coming into the game in an environment where that is something that they are conscious of and that the clubs are conscious of. I think it gets a bit kind of glib and token when people say, you need interest outside the game, because actually I think Paul touched on it better, which is not so much about interest outside the game, but values within the person. And for me, it's something I continue to kind of deal with on a daily basis. When I come back in the door after having had a terrible training session or a great training session, can I be the same person to my parents, my brother, my girlfriend, my friends? And actually, I think one of the things that's helped me is trying to establish a network of people who are really important to you and who you trust and who trust you. And I don't have many friends, but I've got some very close friends. And if I go out for coffee with them or whatever, and they ask, how are you? They don't ask how my seam position is, whether I'm getting my front arm in line. They genuinely mean, how am I? And that is often quite a refreshing experience, and one that I've actually tried to kind of schedule in more of those kind of appointments, I guess, even though that's not a very nice way of saying it, because it keeps that perspective. It's something we care about, so you're going to take it home with you. But I think anything you can do just to shift the balance a little bit, so that doesn't drift into every aspect of your life, is an important one, maybe.
Yeah, lovely, guys. And the final one route that we found has quite a lot of value for people in terms of engaging with mental well-being and mental fitness through cricket is not that just being reactive to problems, but in actual fact thinking about the other side of the mental skills and things that can potentially make someone a better player, but give skills that can be transferred into other areas of your life. So I'm just going to ask both of you, is there something which, even if it be a little technique or something as a philosophy or just a little nugget, that you would like to have told yourself at the start of your career that worked for you as it went along? And obviously we've got two different perspectives there, so I think that would be quite interesting as a point of comparison. So if we go to you, Hortz, what would there be from the guy who was there as the senior pro telling a younger version of yourself at the beginning of the journey?
Good question. I think if I had that again, I would tell a younger version of me two things. That it doesn't matter as much as I thought it mattered, would be the first thing. And the second thing would be, don't hide away from who I really am. So I think in environments and sporting teams, we try to be a little bit of what we think the team requires or needs, or what is favourable, or how it is perceived. And I think sometimes you spend a bit of time trying not to be true and honest to yourself and how you operate and what you are and what you like and what your values are. And I certainly went through that in the early stages of my career in quite a strong, well-established, intimidating Lancashire dressing room, I would say at times. That search for, being what I thought they wanted me to be and behave like, when really, when you start to just being yourself, it's much easier.
Ethan, how about you?
Well, thank you for giving me a bit of time to think, firstly. And I mean, I think it is pretty similar. Obviously, I'm still kind of discovering bits on that journey, but one would definitely be to hold it a little less tightly. I think, like, reflecting on some of my early experiences, I think I felt I had to try so hard. I want it so badly and get it so right that actually I don't remember a lot of them, but I do remember a physical feeling of a lot of tension. And so that would be one. Because, yeah. And the other one would really be, I think it would be yourself again, lean into it more, which in the last 2 years, I've tried to do a little bit more, and it's just a lot less tiring. And it's difficult enough trying to perform in front of people and push yourself and compete with your teammates and be a good teammate. That they are things that all take your energy, and all the things outside cricket that we've just spoken about. And if you're wearing a cloak at the same time, or a mask, then that's another thing to try and grapple with. So yeah, and actually the reaction of people is not normally as bad as you think. Deep down, they may think it's a bit quirky at the start, but I like coffees, I like musicals, I don't really like drinking, and people don't really care that much, I've realised, and I thought they would a lot at the start. And so I'm grateful to those people for allowing me to realise that, because it's been quite refreshing.
Yeah, it's a great place to finish. Thank you very much, both of you, for your time and also your honesty there. I think whether it's cricket, another sport, or something else, loads of things that people can listen to and really reflect. And it's made me think, particularly those things you've said at the end about how you see yourself and how you fit in, and definitely that element of maybe sometimes wanting something so much, even as more of a administrator in cricket, as my perspective, I can fall into that trap as well of wanting to make sure those things and gripping it so tightly that actually you do the opposite of what you're wanting. So yeah, plenty to think on there from there. So I'll wish you both a good evening. Thanks for your time. See you soon.
Cheers.